In today's video, I'm going to share with you how I use the Fight Club effect to make upwards of 6 figures in less than 1 year, and how my clients are using the exact same thing to make upwards of $36,000 per month during the recession of 2023. Hey guys, my name's Yahya, founder and creator of Record Breaker, where I help you shatter past your highest revenue record months in the shortest amount of time. So back in the day, I was stuck in a 9 to 5, more like 9 to 9, working long hours, grinding on weekends too. By the time I came home, all I would be good for is watching TV, eating dinner, and going to sleep. I would see all these entrepreneurs making tons and tons of money, millions, and I'd hope and dream and tell myself, one day I'm going to be the same, I'm going to do the same. But in reality, wasn't doing anything. I literally had no time or energy to do anything except the job I was doing, and I was stuck like this until one day I saw the movie Fight Club and came across the saying, the things we own end up owning us. And it's only after you lose everything that you're free to do anything. And this statement really got me thinking. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to internalize what it was saying, the more proof I saw of this all around me in my life. Let me explain the concept to you. Ownership is an illusion. The things I owned truly did consume me, consume my time, consume my energy, and consume my effort. Let me give you an example. Let's say you buy a fancy car. You don't want to scratch it, you polish it, you clean it, you really look after it. When people climb into it, you say, be careful about the seats, and you definitely do not let anybody eat inside the car. And when people break the rules that you set about your car, you get upset about it. And it even costs you more money to maintain the car. So what your car does is it changes the way you think, feel, and most importantly, the way you behave around other people. Now, initially, when I came across this concept, I didn't really think I owned a lot of things, right? So when I sat down and then I started to make a list of all the things I owned, or the things I maintained, or the things I paid for, it started to become very clear to me that I owned way too many things that quite frankly owned me. I was overconsumed by the things I owned, my clothes, my watches, my subscriptions to things I barely ever used, all the gadgets that I'd piled up, all the books that I'd bought that I never read, and I wanted to add more to the list. This is the craziest part. So essentially, I wanted to give myself more things to worry about, look after, pay for, but never truly use. I had to work harder to maintain them. I had to spend even more money when they broke, and I had to worry about losing them or having them stolen. Now here's the thing. We've been bombarded by a lie that tells us the more things we own, the happier, more content, more successful we will feel. The truth is that these are just distractions from what truly matters. They're weighing us down. And this took a long time for me to realize. But then it dawned on me as to what I actually was doing with myself, with my life, with my energy, with my money. It blew my mind. Now, the other thing is that my obsession with ownership was actually stopping me from creating. And that's why I was poor in spite of actually owning so many things. These things weren't creating anything of value, and so they weren't generating any income, they weren't wealth, they were just things. And that's when I knew I had to break free of this cycle of ownership and start creating and adding value so I could truly experience wealth. I would have impact, I would contribute to the world in a positive way, and at the same time, I would make money while doing it. And I understood that I didn't have to be trapped in this cycle of consumption and stay poor. I could instead be in a cycle of creation and create wealth. So the first thing I started getting rid of was debt, specifically high interest credit card debt. Now, debt is technically intangible. You don't get to touch it, but you most definitely get to feel it. It weighs you down. It is like this thing that you pay for every single month. And before you know it, if you're trapped in a cycle of debt like I was, you get stuck where you pay the vast majority of the money you make into debt, and then you have very little left over to actually spend on things during the month. Having come from a banking background, I'd been introduced to the concept of credit cards very early in my life, and I had amassed a bunch of credit cards, amongst which I'd amassed a ton of debt, using them on stuff, crap, junk that I never was going to use, and it was just there, and I was stuck in a cycle of debt. So I worked hard, very hard, cut my expenses, and I made sure I paid off the credit cards. And till this day, I never accrue, I never rotate my credit cards month to month. I pay off my debt every single month. It is the single biggest damager of financial security, of building wealth, and of truly being able to have money and spend money when you want to, versus spending a ton of money that you really don't own. Paying a huge chunk of your hard income off towards debt is a major joy stealer, and I wasn't going to have it in my life. The next thing to go were shoes and clothes. I had a closet full of shoes, shoes for various occasions, formal shoes, casual shoes, sport shoes, running shoes, lifting shoes, etc., etc., etc. I had the same thing for my wardrobe. Casual clothes, formal clothes, special clothes to wear when I was bulking up, special clothes to wear when I was cutting down. You can imagine how many clothes I had. My wife shared a very simple rule with me. She said, if you haven't used it for 2 years, you probably are not going to use it for the next 2 years. Out it goes. And that's the rule I used and cleaned out a major chunk of my closet. Gone. The next thing to go were all my electronics, all the useless gadgets that I bought over the years. I used the 2-year rule because technically gadgets, have a very short expiry. Technology advances pretty fast, and if you haven't used a gadget in 2 years, it's probably on its way to being obsolete anyway. Out went the gadgets. The next thing to go was a little closer to my heart. My car and my luxury watches. And the reason is pretty simple. I was spending too much time obsessing and thinking and following the market and seeing what the latest models were, etc., etc. That was problem number one. Problem number two was my ego. I was getting too invested. I was starting to let my car and my watches, essentially my possessions, define the sort of person I was because they made me feel a certain way. And I did not want in my life my ego to be something that dictates to me what I should and shouldn't do, what I should and shouldn't worry about, what I should and shouldn't think of, what I should and shouldn't spend my money on. That's a big mistake I saw a lot of people making, where their ego would tell them what they should buy and what they shouldn't buy. Then they'd have to defend the purchase because it's their ego. Everybody likes to defend their ego. And I didn't want any of that crap happening to me, in my ego, on my conscience, in my life, in my thoughts. I consolidated a collection of over 25 watches down to 2. One of them's in the bank, one of them's the one that I wear. And that's it. Now, this was a very hard process to start because it goes completely against the message that society has been feeding us since the day we were born. We live in a capitalist consumer culture that tempts us to want more, upgrade what we have to the latest. Essentially, it is the opposite to a simpler life, which is what we need to be living if we are to truly create generational wealth. Because one of the things that I realized as I was going on this journey is that stuff doesn't just have a financial cost. It has a mental and an emotional cost as well. Your stuff doesn't just take up space in your house, it takes up space in your mind as well. So in my years spent growing my second and third businesses, I was constantly traveling amongst many different countries. And so I had a great opportunity to actually slim everything down, consolidate it into what could fit inside one hand carry piece of luggage. And that's exactly what I did. Because when you're traveling in lots of countries, you're pretty much living in a hotel room and you're living out of a suitcase. So you very quickly realize all the crap that you bought that you cannot travel with, or then you have to lug it around, doesn't really matter. There's actually very few things you need to live an amazing, fulfilling, wonderful life. And when I did this, it's pretty weird how curating the possessions in my world actually completely decluttered my mind and allowed me to focus on what truly moved the needle in my life, which was working, growing businesses, looking after my health, and being there for my family. I had no mental distractions. I had no financial distractions. I had no emotional distractions. I had no physical distractions clutching my space. And I could only focus on business building. And that's what I did, and things sped the hell up. And I was able to achieve in a year what most people spend a lifetime trying to achieve and still don't achieve it. So in effect, ownership is an illusion. We truly, really do not own anything. In fact, things own us. The sort of person who derives a good feeling from owning things is a person who's a victim because they think they're not good enough to create wealth. Hence, they need to buy and accumulate wealth for a disaster or save for a rainy day. If you're good enough and you've invested in yourself and you've up-leveled your mind, you can create wealth whenever you need it. You have access to wealth. You really don't need to hoard wealth. And this concept is something I practice with my clients as well. We declutter their lives. We declutter their brain. We declutter their hearts for emotional space that is needed for their business. Most people running a business hate their business. They hate showing up to do the work they need to do. And then they wonder why their results are so bad. So what I encourage you to do is to start creating. Don't start throwing things away that you own because it's a really hard process. It's a lot easier to actually start creating something that has an impact in the world, that is of value, and that makes you money. When this starts to happen, you start creating an upward cycle of you creating something, selling it for value, getting the money, feeling good about it, creating more, getting better, learning more, selling more, and then all of a sudden, all the other things in the background, all the clutter that you've amassed, all the useless junk that you own starts to become less and less and less important, and it automatically fades away.